This is an old style Marco G4 slit lamp with the ring around the joystick elevation. And if we were needing to get into the slit mechanism, whether it's drifting or sluggish, hard to turn, well, we'll have to go into here. We're going to be eventually taking this whole lamp and slit assembly out of here, which is, there's 3 screws, 1, 2, and then one on the other side. And we're going to have to take off this cap assembly, so you can either take the cap off while it's still on, or you can just take the whole thing off and take it off piece by piece. So we'll have to pull this cord up off the retainers, and we'll be removing the cable and the bulb and removing the cap. There's 4 screws holding this lever cover on. I'm going to be taking those off and then taking off 3 screws here to get this cap off. With the lamp cover off, we're beginning to see some of the inner mechanisms, the filter wheel and the aperture diaphragm underneath. So if we wanted to take this light assembly off, there's 3 screws, 1, 2, and 3. We'll take those 3 screws out. With those 3 screws out, you can take the light assembly out and move it out of your way. Now we can see our filters, and if you wanted to clean them, you could clean them out here, and then behind it you can get to the filters to clean behind them. And one of these doesn't have a lens in it at all, so you can actually see the slits, and you can clean your slits, blow them off. Inside there's the mirror that's deeper in here. You could get your cotton swabs and clean the mirror that's behind the slits that makes the light travel up. And you can see your slits and see what's going on with them. If they're not closing, it could be there's some debris in between your slits, and you can try to clean them out with your cotton swabs and with your hurricane blower and blow it out to try to get those slits to close without any debris in them. On this model G4, the slit width adjustment has a stop on it. It doesn't turn continuously, opening and closing as you turn. This has a stop. So turning towards you is the close, and turning away from you is opening the slits. And if your slits are sluggish or hard, well, if it's a tension, you can adjust the tension in here. It has a tension nut, but it's usually going to be something that the grease has gotten old and lost its viscosity, so that really needs to be cleaned. So you can do just the slit width mechanism, but it's probably also going to be your gear in the back, your cam gear, and that's deeper in there. So, but if you were just doing the slit width mechanism, you would be taking the knobs off. They've got Allen screws, and we'll do that, and then we'll see what's underneath those. By taking the knobs off of the slit width, we'll see the tension adjusting nut, and we'll also see the stop. The stop is because there's a pin here and a pin in the knob, and so when you turn it, it's going to, this pin in the knob is going to hit that pin, and that's going to make it stop. So eventually when you put it all back together and you're wondering where it's you want to put it, you can look at your slits, and when they're closed, well, then that's going to be the stop. And the set screw should be lining up right with the flat part of the shaft. So you'll know you've got it right if you took it off and the set screw is landing on this flat edge of the shaft, and you're returning it the same way. Now when we're going to be going in deeper and taking the inner cam gear out to clean that, well, the alignment of your gears, your gear of your slit width, and the gear of the cam that's operating the slits, they might be a little different. So you're going to have to keep that in mind when you're putting everything back together. You want the slits closed, and you're going to want the slit width gear axle going in at the same, this synchronized, so that it closes with your knob and your pin, and the lock screw is hitting on the flat part. So just do one thing at a time. You can do, first of all, you can do the slit width knob mechanism, and just keeping it at the same, keeping everything the same by just taking it out and reinserting it and then putting it back together, and then going deeper to go into the cam of the mating gear. So to get this slit width shaft assembly out, we're going to be, there's another little Allen screw here. It's I think it's got a 1.3 millimeter. We'll be taking that off and unscrewing it. And behind there's a wave washer, a thrust washer, and a brake washer behind there. So we'll be making sure we keep those in there when we're putting back together. And then on top, holding there, this is like a little cam. They call this an eccentric metal guide. It's a shaft guide. It's going to guide the shaft, and it can go up and down by the way it turns. So if you wanted to put a little mark so that when you're putting this little cam, eccentric cam, back in, you're putting it in the same spot. I'm just going to put a little mark here. Give me an idea that when I put it back together, it's going to go there. But if you don't get it, it's okay. You can turn this little cam, which makes the shaft either go up or down. It can make the shaft travel like that, and you will just be turning it to see which way is best for the freest movement. So we'll go ahead and take these out by just loosening these lock screws on the top and the side. We can pull out this whole slit width shaft assembly out, and we're going to be cleaning the shaft, and we're going to be taking this tension nut off so we can get behind there and clean under the shaft underneath and putting in new number 9 grease. So if you have your 1.3 millimeter Allen wrench, you can loosen that and unscrew this tension nut with all the washers, and we'll be putting them back in the same order, and then we'll be taking this little cam off here. We've got our mark where it's going to go back, and we'll be cleaning all of that and relubing it with number 9 grease. Number 9 grease is a thicker viscosity. It's a Haag-Streit grease, and you want something a little bit thicker viscosity on your slit width mechanism, whether it's the shaft or the cam inside, the cam gear inside. You need grease with thicker viscosity because you do need some tension. Otherwise, the springs on the slits are just going to close it because they don't have enough tension to keep, because your thin viscosity doesn't have enough tension to hold everything still. So that's pretty important about getting the right grease. So we'll go ahead and take this apart and clean it. There's nothing like a picture, right? Well, here's a diagram of our parts, and we've got our parts lined out. We have our shaft, we have our collar, we have this brake washer. It's like a thin plastic nylon washer that's going to go on the inside, and then our eccentric metal guide, and then over here we're going to have our other brake washer on the other side, and a thrust washer, a wave washer, and the nut. So we're going to put everything back together just like we took it off, and we're going to be using number 9 grease to put some grease over everything. Not a lot of grease, just a little bit. Also going to be cleaning this guide, shaft guide that we didn't take off. You could take it off, but we're going to leave it on and just clean it on the inside. Now, this little pin, it goes through this guide, and there's a little indentation where it fits into to keep it from turning. So when you put it back, make sure you put this guide back with the pin going in the little indentation. Now we've got it all put back together and ready to reinstall. When we're going to, you just kind of twist it a little bit to let the gears mesh up as you're going in. And if we still have our line on there. We know that our eccentric cam is in the right position, and we can look at our slits underneath to see if they're actually closed when our closed pin is going to be hitting there. So we look at where our position of our set screw is and see if it's lining up. Then you're in good shape. And reinstall that, and then we can tighten our set screws on our cam. Just snug them up. So just checking to see if I have the shaft in the right spot. When my slits closed, first I'm going to open them up a little bit and then close them, and see if my set screw lines up with the flat part of the shaft. So I'm going to open up my slits and close them, and just when they close, now I'll look at the flat part of my shaft and where my pin is going to connect, and I can see that I am off. My screw hole is down here, and the flat part of the shaft is up here. So I'm off a little bit. If I were to tighten that down there, I would be screwing it into the wrong position on the shaft. So that means I'm going to have to pull the shaft back out and line it up, turn it a little bit so that it looks like it's going to line up right where the hole is, where the flat part is, and then reinsert it. So take these set screws back out a little bit. Or enough to pull the shaft out. Okay, so looking at it, when it's closed there, I need my hole to be there, so I need to turn my shaft. Okay, I think I might have gotten it. I had to take it in and out a few times and reinsert it, and then finally I had to turn it a whole 180, and then it started lining up better. So now my flat part of my shaft that the set screw is going to land in now lines up when the slits are closed with the hole in the knob at the stopping point. So I'm pretty sure I got it in the right spot, and I can always turn my cam to be back in the correct position. And if you didn't make a mark, well, just turn that cam until it turns freely, and then that's probably the good spot. So you can always take the set screw out and look and see if it's actually hitting the flat part of the shaft, if you want to verify. But it was a little more tricky than I thought, and it's just because I haven't done it enough, and maybe I'm not doing it right. Once you have your knob attached, lined up with the flat side of the shaft, and your slits are closing at the stop point, we can go ahead and line up our eccentric cam and tighten it up with the 2 lock screws. And we can either put our knob on now, or we can wait until we put our light assembly on and check to see if it's drifting, if it's tight enough to hold the slit in place, and we can readjust this nut to tighten it or loosen it. And once you have that down the way you like it, you can tighten the set screw on the lock nut. After doing your shaft, there's 3 screws here. We'll be taking those out, 1, 2, and 3. By taking those 3 screws out, we can pull out the housing. We have a rotating ring and a stop screw. And we'll be taking this apart with our spanner wrench to loosen that. And we're going to be taking it out, so we'll have to release these 3 screws or remove them. And then these little shafts are going to come off. Now, when you're putting it back together, these shafts have a flat edge, and they rest up against this ledge right here that goes around here. So when you're putting these back on, you'll notice there's a flat edge right at the base, and you'll need to line those back up, put those studs back on. So we'll go ahead and remove our flange nut and top screw, and now under here there's going to be a spring and a little ball bearing. That's the detent. So we want to be careful about making sure we don't lose that ball bearing and spring when we take this off. Since this is moving pretty well, it's got the necessary tension on it, we're not going to take this apart and to clean it and relube it, because it's moving well and it's got some tension on it, so, and it's stopping at the detent, so we're not going to mess with that. But if you had to, that's what you would do. So to take this out, we've got 4 screws in the corners. 1, 2, and then you'll have to turn your filter wheel to the open spot and move your aperture diaphragm wheel to get to the wheels, to get to the screws in the corner. That one, and then we'll turn this, turn our diaphragm wheel, and then we can get that one. So it's 4 screws to pull this assembly out. And we also have to take off this spacer. We need to take that off. It's got 2 screws. And then again, we can look through our opening and take off those 2 screws. That's going to come off too. So the spacer with the 2 screws and the 4 corner screws, we can pull that assembly out. And I just wanted to show you these shafts. You can see the flat part that needs to rest against the flat edge here when you're putting it back into place. So you just turn it to where the flat edge resting on that. With our 4 screws removed and the spacer taken off at the top, we can pull our cam gear assembly out. And here's our other assembly that we've already refurbished. We're going to leave that right in place, not turning it. And to get to this cam gear, we'll have to take off this ring nut, but this ring nut has a set screw in it. It's very small. So we're going to have to loosen that set screw so we can turn this ring nut off, so we can pull our cam out and clean the inside of the cam and around the cam and re-grease it so that it will turn freely and with the right number 9 grease we'll have the right tension. After we've loosened the lock screw, we're going to unscrew it. It might be kind of tight, so you may have to use some pliers to get it started. And go ahead and take that ring nut off. Be careful that it's got very fine threads. And we can take off this cam gear. You see how it operates by, as it turns, it's going to open up the slits. So that's the cam. We need to clean all the inside of that, clean this area, this post, with from all old grease, and then put some number 9 grease back on those areas, inside of here, everywhere, just a thin coat of nice number 9 grease, and slip it back into place. Make sure it's turning freely, and then reinstall your ring nut. Be careful not to cross thread it. And just give it just a slight snug with your pliers. Make sure it's still turning freely. See, if you don't have the right kind of grease, it's going, the spring on the slits is going to cause it to close more than you want. It's going to cause it to drift. So that's why you need all the tension of the number 9 grease on this assembly and on your slit width assembly. So once that's on, we'll tighten that set screw back up and reinstall. If you needed to take your filter wheel off, there's 3 small screws there you would have to take off to get to it. If you needed to get down to your slits, you would have to take both the filter wheel and the aperture wheel off to get to your slits. Hopefully you won't have to do that. Once you have it all back together, make sure your slits are closed, and then reinstall back into our housing. And hopefully we would not have adjusted anything. We're still at the closed position. So our slits are closed. So we'll try to slip it in there and allow the gears to mesh while the slits are still being closed. You may have to go in and out a few times to make sure that they're still closed while you're getting your gear back in. Once you have it in place, you test it to see if it's still closing. You can put your 4 screws in and your spacer spaced out evenly, so you might try adjusting the retainers so that they're fairly equal, and then look through the light and see if your slits are closing. But it will make a difference if your retainers are not evenly spaced similarly. If everything is closing, we can, and your mirror's clean in there, we can go ahead and reinstall and put our 3 screws back in. Put our 3 studs back in with the flat part up against the ledge while we install our screw in the back, but leave them a little bit loose so that when we're putting our light assembly on, we can adjust it a little bit. Check your filters one more time, blow off any dust and off of your aperture diaphragm, and then reinstall your light assembly on your 3 studs. We left them a little loose so they can line up with our holes. With our light assembly on, the screws snugged in behind it, everything's nice and tight, we can go ahead and turn our power on, look through our binoculars and check our filters, our diaphragms, and our closing. All those 3 checks you might want to take. If everything looks good, go ahead and put it back together. Put your cap cover back on, both covers, and attach your screws, and also the wire retainer on the bottom, and your bulb cover. You've got it all put back together. Check it one more time. Look through your binoculars, focus rod, focus bar, and check everything. Make sure your slits are closing, diaphragms are working, filters are clear, and your slits open and close. Make sure your wire travel, you've got enough wire travel as you turn your assembly. Here's a quick little review of the diagram. We didn't take the rotating ring off or the flange with the spring and the ball bearing detent underneath it and the stop screw. But that's what you would do if you took that off. And we looked at all our parts, lined everything up, greased it with number 9 grease. And here are the part names. And for our other assembly, which we didn't go into very detailed, but if you needed the diagram, there it is. We just touched on a few things, especially the retainers, making sure that they're even. There's 4 of them, and making sure they're even so that the slits, they all have bearings, ball bearings, that they're riding on this little guide rail, and so it positions your slit to close evenly. So if you're having an issue with your slits not being perfectly closed, it could be that your retainers need to be moved in or out a little bit to get both of those slits hitting flush. This was the back end, our cam with the gear, the helical gear, and the ring nut with its set screw. We did do that, and we didn't go through this, but that's the diagram. And the part names. This is an older style Marco slit lamp, and they've kept some of the things, they've developed it over the years, but it's still a good slit lamp, and it's got some good mags on it, so it should be a good slit lamp for our friends in Haiti. I just wanted to show you that the newer style of the G4 does not have a flat spot on the shaft, slit width adjustment shaft, so you don't have to tighten the set screw on the flat part. All you have to do is look at where your slits are turning off, and when they go black, that means that's your stop, and you can put your knob on with your pins that match for stop, and just put it on and turn it to where it actually stops, since you know you have your lights already at the closed position, and then you just have to tighten your knob. So this is a great improvement of rather than the style of the flat spot where you had to tighten it at that exact spot, which made it more difficult to line up the slits closing with the stopping action. So just want to let you see that. So if you have a newer style of the G4, it's still an old style, but even of the old style, it's an improvement.